The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There will be spoilers. This episode is scripted, recorded, edited and narrated by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 143, in which we will be looking at Season 2, Episode 6 of the TV series, and Episode 19 of the series overall, The Orchard. I'm still showcasing Watership Down themed art, details in the notes. Please let me know if you would like your Watership Down themed art to appear as the podcast title image for an episode, with full credit given. Next, a correction. Last week, while recording outdoors, I accidentally referred to episode 18 as episode 17, just in case that was confusing. Before we go any further, I need to acknowledge the sad death of Joss Ackland, who died on the 19th of November, aged 95. He voiced the Black Rabbit of Inlay at the end of the 1978 film, and his gentle but authoritative tones are one of the things that make that final scene so poignant. My posting about this on Watership Down related social media has produced a large reaction, which reflects very well how loved he was as an actor. Very touchingly, this has included comments from fans who had no idea it was his voice in that incredible scene. My heart has joined 1,000, for my friend stopped running today. Rest in peace, Joss Ackland. And so, on to this week's episode, which has something to do with apples, as opposed to, say, the plight of the newly arrested Campion. Season 2, Episode 6, The Orchard. The 19th episode of the Watership Down TV series was first broadcast in the UK on the 7th of September 2000. It was written by Anna Bourke. There will be a link to the episode in the notes. As I hinted at the end of Burrow Keeping, this episode is a good example of the sometimes bizarre pacing of this series. At the end of last week's episode, Campion, working as a spy for the Warren on Watership Down, was arrested, having finally been caught out by the evil of Yvain. You would have thought, given that unresolved cliffhanger, that the next episode would at least address that situation. But no. Don't get me wrong, the story told here has a place in the overall story, but maybe not at this point. It would have made far more sense to swap it with next week's episode. Anyway. It is moving towards autumn on Watership Down. That's the fall if you're in North America, a term that was apparently common here as well until the 17th century. Another name for that time of year was harvest, and the rabbits of Watership Down have discovered a rich source of human harvest in the form of an apple orchard. The episodes that follow, which by happy coincidence will coincide with the lead up to Christmas, are an interesting feature of this series' expansion of the storytelling world of Watership Down. For although the epilogue in the novel is set in March, and the subsequent tales from Watership Down covered the winter period, the original novel, and therefore the 1978 film, were basically all set during the course of an English summer. Therefore, the episodes over the next few weeks are the first examples of full storytelling on film showing the rabbits of Watership Down during autumn and winter. As Hazel and Bigwig admire the rich supply of apples, the camera pans to a pair of eyes in a hollow under one of the trees, and we hear just 2 words spoken. Long ear. This does not bode well. Bigwig has spotted a perfect apple that hasn't fallen yet. Naturally, that is the one he wants, and he makes it clear he has reserved it. Just then, Hazel hears rustling from the direction of a ladder and a stack of baskets. As they look, a vicious badger or lendry in lapine emerges from long grass and advances towards them, grasping an apple as she does so. As she holds the apple up towards them, Hazel and Bigwig, who have been backing away, make a run for it. The badger throws the apple to one side in apparent disgust. Badgers, or in this case the European badger, are an interesting species. They are omnivorous and will adapt their diet to circumstances, their staple food being earthworms, but although they certainly can be a danger to rabbits, in Britain you would be hard-pressed to call them a lil. In fact, rabbits and badgers have even been known to live side by side. Having said that, a hungry badger that encountered a weak or injured rabbit would very likely make a meal of it. One way or another, they are bigger and stronger than rabbits, have large claws, and are also very fast. Where we live, we are lucky enough to see badgers and foxes interact on most evenings, and I can tell you from repeated personal observation that foxes are far more scared of badgers than the other way around. As rabbits, for whom foxes are a big danger, Hazel and Bigwig are entirely right to be cautious. However, this is the somewhat Disney-fied second season of the Watership Down TV series, and we already know this badger can talk, unlike dogs and foxes, so who knows how this will turn out. Having got clear of the orchard, Hazel and Bigwig turn back and bemoan the fact that the orchard will not be the easy food source they thought it would be. The badger is the largest Bigwig has ever seen. On the down, Pipkin is regaling Hazel and Primrose's two kittens, Snowdrop and Gilia, with the tale of his escape from the weasel. He is offended by the suggestion that he just ran away from the weasel, and is just about to say what he really did when Primrose takes them away for their afternoon nap. She says Pipkin is getting as bad as Dandelion, meaning he spins tall tales. Fiver, uncharacteristically, makes fun of Pipkin for saying that running away isn't the answer to everything. Pipkin irritably says Bigwig says it isn't, and who wants to hear a story about running away? Awkwardly, at that moment, Hazel and Bigwig arrive back from the orchard after running away. They tell Pipkin about the badger and let him know that for now the orchard is off limits. For the young Pipkin of this series, that is kind of like putting up a sign saying orchard this way. After Keehaw tries to comfort him by saying apples are rubbish anyway, Pipkin asks Keehaw not to offer him fish in compensation. I think Keehaw has got the message, rabbits and fish. Pipkin is left with Fiver, and they both look longingly in the direction of the orchard. They can smell the apples from the top of the hill. Pipkin reminds Fiver that apples only come around once every circle of seasons. The seemingly less mature Fiver of this episode adds that a scent doesn't fill up your stomach. They look at one another, then back at the warren, and they are off down the hill towards the orchard. Getting closer to the orchard, they pause. Pipkin says he has never seen a badger before. Given that Season 1 started by the River Enbourne, this is feasible in this version of the story, as we are spared the whole ordeal in the woods, where the escapees from Sandalford encountered a Lendry. Fiver says he has seen one, and says they are nasty and don't even like each other. He tries suggesting a lovely patch of sorrel instead, but Pipkin's immaturity wins the day. Despite Fiver worrying about Hazel's reaction if he finds out, they continue towards the orchard. Fiver says he used to be sensible before they arrived on Watership Down. That isn't true, though, and this Fiver should know better. As they approach the orchard, the badger, concealed in long grass, spots them and growls. Fiver and Pipkin enter the orchard, and Fiver says they need to be quick. Pipkin is in heaven and sets about the apples with great enthusiasm, but Fiver is growing more and more nervous. He now knows this was a bad idea. And then, of course, Fiver hears a sound behind him. It is the badger, and she is advancing on him. Pipkin snaps out of it and realises the danger at last. Fiver says to run when he says so. If they get separated, they will meet on the hill. As Pipkin runs, he knocks over the stack of baskets. This tips over the ladder that strikes Fiver as he is running past, knocking him to the ground. Pipkin goes back to him, but he is out cold, and the badger is still advancing on him. Pipkin has to run, leaving Fiver to the badger. The badger reaches Fiver, says Long Ear, scruffs him, and drags him away to its lair. Pipkin watches helplessly as Fiver disappears underground. There is nothing he can do. Sadly, Pipkin makes his way back up the down. He is met by Keehaw flying overhead. Pipkin starts to raise the alarm, but an excited Keehaw is gone. Apparently there is a game of bobstones underway. And now Pipkin is in tears. He knows this is his fault. On the down, the kittens are playing chase. As Pipkin arrives, one of them asks Pipkin if it is right that only Quivery Whiskers run away. Pipkin repeats the phrase sadly. The game of bobstones between Hazel and Bigwig is at a crucial stage. Pipkin goes up to Hazel to speak with him, but is told to wait. Primrose notices that something is wrong and is about to speak with him when she hears her kittens arguing and has to deal with them instead. Pipkin, all alone and traumatised, goes underground. In the orchard, Fiver comes round in the lair of the badger. At first he doesn't know where he is, and his legs collapse underneath him. He is still weak. And then the badger is looming over him. Threateningly she tells him, "Back! Stay!" As she leaves, Fiver says, "Frith, help me." On Watership Down, Bigwig is boasting about his latest Bobstones victory to Hawkbit and Dandelion. Hazel emerges asking if anyone has seen Fiver. There is no panic yet, and Bigwig carries on boring his audience. They have both had enough, so he picks on a reluctant Broom to tell her all about his victory next. Underground, Primrose is checking on Pipkin. He says he isn't hungry, so she leaves him. Only then does the grief-stricken Pipkin cry out about abandoning Fiver when he needed him. But he turns to see he is alone. He says he feels awful. To himself. Back in the orchard, the badger carries an apple underground, only to see Fiver has gone. She cries out in alarm. Fiver is in a tunnel trying to find a way out, but it is a dead end. And then he sees the badger descending on him, making a sound almost like laughter. He cries out at her to get it over with and kill him. The badger replies, "Bark, not kill. Bark, help." Surprised, Fiver asks why. In her broken whatever language this is, she says he is hurt. She knows hurt. No one helped her when she was hurt. It is sad to hurt, and sad to be lonely. She reaches out a paw and asks him to let her help. Relieved, Fiver puts his paw in hers. Bark is voiced by Janet Dale, a versatile actress who also voiced Keehar's now ex-lover Katerina the Seagull 2 episodes ago. She is best spotted by an international audience as Queen Charlotte in the film The Madness of King George 1994, though she is better known perhaps by a UK audience for her TV work. Sadly, Janet Dale passed away in May this year. On Watership Down, Keehar lands with Hannah the mouse on his back. They report that there is no sign of Fiver. Hawkbit cannot find him underground either. Dandelion arrives to say he's asked the neighbours to keep an eye out. As Hazel organises a more thorough search over the whole surrounding landscape, Pipkin emerges looking sad. It is obvious that this search will place all of them at quite a lot of risk. Efraffan patrols are mentioned. Pipkin not saying anything is now getting dangerous, which means, of course, that being so young, he gets more and more scared of speaking up as time passes. For the first time, as far as I can recall, you get a real sense of this series addressing a younger audience with a message about mistakes and responsibility. Pipkin catches up with Hazel and suggests looking in the orchard, but Hazel says he told Fiver not to go there and he doesn't disobey orders. Pipkin begs to come with them, even though he seemed not to be well earlier. The still unnecessary search fans out. At the orchard, Fiver is being fed apples by Bark the badger, who says she will bring him food and take care of him, and he will stay with her. Fiver says his leg is feeling a lot better. He should be able to go soon. But Bark says he will stay there with her. They will be friends for always. Fiver says of course they will. She offers him another apple. Fiver has had his fill. It is night time, and Hazel and Pipkin arrive at the orchard. An owl lurks in a tree. Pipkin says he is sorry, to which Hazel replies it isn't his fault. The owl suddenly swoops and lifts Hazel into the air. He kicks at it until he is released. It is like what happened to Campion in episode 12 in series 1, but luckily Hazel is not injured nearly as badly in the fall. Seeing how much danger he has placed Hazel in, Pipkin desperately confesses what happened. Hazel's strength of character shows through as he sees Pipkin's pain at what he has done. This is a good representation of how the Hazel of the novel would react. He embraces the traumatised Pipkin. Bark is expanding her set, for we should no longer call it a lair, to accommodate her new friend Fiver, who is beginning to look a bit freaked out. She says there is no need for him to go above ground ever. He asks her how long she has been alone. A long time, it seems. Her clan is gone. They moved away into the Shadowland. This seems to mean they all died. Fiver asks about friends. Everyone is afraid of her, apparently. Sometimes she hides just to listen to other animals. She has heard them talk of animals on Watership Down, how they are friends to all. Fiver asks why she didn't come to them. She says she tried when they came for apples. Everybody runs from her. Looking at that scene again, you can see that she was trying to offer Hazel and Bigwig an apple. Fiver says she is right and apologises. Bark offers him another apple. He confesses to being a bit full. Bark insists. Her social skills do need a bit of a polish. The search party have all been told to rendezvous outside the orchard by Keehaw and Hannah, who doesn't sound happy. It is late at night and owls can be heard. Bigwig arrives with Hawkbit and is ready to confront Pipkin, but Hazel orders him to stop. Pipkin made a mistake. So has Bigwig before. Primrose points out that Pipkin would have been caught as well if he had stayed with Fiver. Bigwig insists Pipkin should have told them. Hawkbit, in a rare moment of compassion, says Pipkin was afraid, just as he was when he discovered the caverns in episode 11. Pipkin asks if they don't hate him. Bigwig winks and says no. And so to business. They all make their way into the orchard. Fiver is trying to leave Bark's set, but she blocks his way, saying he is a friend and must stay. Fiver says that friends don't make each other do things they don't want to do. They try to understand each other. Bark says she understands, but she would like to see him again. Does he understand? Fiver says of course. They are friends. It is a wholesome moment, completely aimed at helping children to navigate the complex world of playground politics, and as a proud grandparent, I thoroughly approve. Above ground, the rabbits are approaching the entrance of Bark's set. Hazel tells Bigwig that badgers are night wanderers. When she comes out, he will ask her what happened to Fiver. Bigwig says you cannot talk to badgers as they are savage brutes. Dandelion says Bigwig had said something like that about Keehaw when he first dropped in on them. Funnily enough, this seems to be more a reference to the original novel. In episode 1 of this series, when they first met Keehaw at Nuthanger Farm, Bigwig said nothing of the sort. Bark is leading Fiver above ground, but his leg is still a bit stiff. He says it would be an idea to stay until morning. Suddenly his leg hurts and he cries out. Above ground, Hazel hears his brother cry out. Bigwig says the badger is hurting him. Below ground, Fiver is okay again. Bark offers him more apples, but he really has had his fill of them. Bark tells him to stay as she makes her way above ground to get more apples for her friend. As the badger emerges from her lair, Pipkin looks inside and sees Fiver, who looks hurt. Hazel tells him and Primrose to get him out. The rest of them will buy them some time. The Watership Down Owsla rush the terrified Bark, rolling her over. She begs them to stop, but Hazel barges into her again. They press their attack. Meanwhile, Pipkin and Primrose get Fiver above ground. He emerges to see a terrified, cowering Bark surrounded by the Watership Down Owsla and cries out for them to stop. He rushes up to Bark and says she is his friend. Bark says she is sorry. Sorry she is a badger. Fiver says they won't hurt her now. They understand. They all understand. Bark smiles. She asks if friends understand. Fiver reassures her they will always understand. As they leave the orchard, most of them carrying apples, you can't help noticing, Bigwig wonders at their being friends with a badger. Will wonders never cease? Hawkbit says not on a Watership Down, apparently. They pick up their apples and make their way back, except for Fiver. He has had enough of apples for the moment. As the sun rises, they return to Watership Down. Is it canon? It is interesting to compare this episode with Chapter 11 of Tales from Watership Down, the sequel to the original novel written by Richard Adams, published in 1996 and covered in episode 107 of this podcast. It was published 4 years before this episode first aired. In that story, we encounter another lone and very controlling badger who keeps Ella and Rabscuttle prisoner. And interestingly, I quoted Leah Michaela in the Is It Canon section of that episode, who contrasted the badger they encounter with Bark, the new friend of the rabbits of Watership Down. This contrast is a perfect illustration of the ambiguous relationship between rabbits and badgers. I am happy to say we will meet Bark again in this series. She is one of its more thoughtful creations and a very pleasing example of toleration of difference. That difference could be said to be cultural or neurological. Frankly, it doesn't matter. Tolerance is tolerance, and it matters. Next time, Vervain is very pleasingly subjected to the Hafsa experience, as the Watership Down TV series pays tribute to the trial of El Ra.